We went to the hospital and I didn't get, the midwife that I was working with was a different midwife whom I didn't really have a good experience with, so I was already discouraged from the get-go. And I remember the midwife asking me, do you want to wait for the labor to progress and for her to come out, or do you want to push? And I was like, I want to be done. I want to push her out. And I remember, so I was pushing her. I think I pushed maybe for 45 minutes, and then she was like, oh, she's a little bit tight, so I need to pull her out. So once her head was out, she pulled her out, which was not the best decision because she dislocated my tailbone, and then the baby's neck was injured somehow because soon after birth she didn't want to turn on one side. My name is Hiwote and I'm a mom of 3, and I'm in the health space. I support women and mothers through different stages of their lives, but I'm just very passionate about pregnancy, birth, and especially breastfeeding. So I'm in the process of becoming a lactation consultant to support mothers through their breastfeeding journey. My first, it was interesting because I really thought I was not pregnant. I wasn't trying or preventing, but I guess I was trying to prevent, but I was tracking my cycles, and then I thought, everything was fine, and I was late for my cycle, but I was having cramps and things like that, so I thought, okay, it's coming, it's there. But a couple of days passed by, and it's just my cycle is very accurate and consistent. So I was like, okay, this is weird. I need to check. And I remember I woke up one morning really early, took a pregnancy test, and it was positive. It was, I guess, the biggest shock of my life. I knew it was possible, but it was just, So I remember I woke up my husband and I was like, guess what? I'm pregnant. And he was like, oh wow, and then he just fell back asleep. But I think it took me time to really warm up to the idea. It wasn't this oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, yay. I wanted kids, and but it wasn't exactly the time that I imagined I would be pregnant. So it was very shocking, but I've always wanted kids, so we really embraced it. But I think they always say you'll never be ready, right? Even if you're ready. So definitely it was a journey. But I think shock is kind of how I felt for the first time. I've usually had, I guess, uneventful or not very difficult pregnancies. I think I really miss the kicks, just feeling your baby inside of you kicking is just, I don't know, such a special feeling. And for me, even several months after birth, I just kind of had that sensation, I just forget that they're actually here with me and I'm holding them, and I just miss that aspect of them kicking from inside. It's just, it's just such an amazing feeling. So I have 3 kids, so there's, I guess, 3 days to talk about. So the first one, obviously nothing went as I expected. I always wanted a natural birth, so I had prepared and I had done everything. I had a doula, I was working with a midwife, and I remember the midwife was telling me my due date was I think New Year's or just sometime around there. So she was like, your body looks like it's ready, she's gonna come early, I have a feeling. And well, to all our surprises, she was actually 2 weeks past the due date, which I know due dates are an estimate, but I just always thought, somehow I was gonna give birth before that. So I didn't want to be induced, so I was just doing everything natural to help her come, without having any medication. But obviously she had other plans, and I was 42 weeks and I had to be induced. And that day was very stressful because my doula that I had been working with all, for since I was like, I think 20 weeks pregnant, was at another birth that was taking long, so she couldn't come. And then obviously I was being induced. I wasn't ready for, for all of that, even though I knew was a possibility. It's just something I dreaded, and I think I didn't mentally prepare myself for that. So yeah, we went to the hospital, and I didn't get, the midwife that I was working with, it was a different midwife whom I didn't really have a good experience with. So I was already discouraged from the get-go. I mean, I was already 3 centimeters dilated, so they gave me Pitocin, or the synthetic oxytocin. It started, but my contractions were extremely, extremely painful. And I was in labor for, I think, 15 hours. And I had said I didn't want to take an epidural because, again, I wanted a natural birth, but I also had low platelets. And, when they put the epidural on that side, if you have low platelets, there's a chance that you can bleed. So I wanted to avoid that. But the midwife kept telling me, I don't think you're going to have a baby till tomorrow. And I was in like excruciating pain because of the Pitocin. And I was begging my husband, I'm like, I need that epidural because I don't think I can do this. I can't do this till tomorrow. But anyways, my doula they always set up a backup doula. So she had set us up with one, and I told my husband I think 3 hours or 4 hours into the labor, I was like, I think it's time to call her. So we called her, and she came, and I mean, she really, really supported me. I was moving, trying to use water, just different types of techniques, but I was just in a lot of pain, and I think also just a lot of sadness, because in that moment I was also mourning the birth that I had imagined. And because of just how things worked out, my mom was also in the room with us, which wasn't the plan, because she easily gets stressed out. So that added a whole layer of stress, because she was really stressed out seeing her daughter go through labor. And I'm the firstborn, so this was her first experience. So just all of that made it very difficult. But anyways, and I did take the epidural, I think when at the 12-hour mark. Had I known she would be born 3 hours later, I probably wouldn't have, but then it also didn't work for me. It numbed one side, but it wasn't working on the other. And anyways, so she was born 3 minutes before midnight, and I remember the midwife asking me, do you want to wait for the labor to progress and for her to come out, or do you want to push? And I was like, I want to be done. I want to push her out. And I remember, so I was pushing her. I think I pushed maybe for 45 minutes, and then she was like, oh, she's a little bit tight, so I need to pull her out. So once her head was out, she pulled her out, which was not the best decision because she dislocated my tailbone, and then the baby's neck was injured somehow, because soon after birth she didn't want to turn on one side. There was something really special about it because I didn't know the gender until I gave birth to her. I didn't want to find out, but deep down I always felt like she was a girl, and I would talk to her like a girl. And obviously after I gave birth, I completely forgot about even thinking about the gender. I was just so happy that I was holding my baby. But someone was like, it's a girl, and I was like, I knew you. That was the first thing that I said to her. Oops, sorry, I did. And it was just it was such a relief, I think, because it was such a hard labor, but I was in a lot of pain after. And I remember they were telling me, oh, it's because this is your first time, you haven't given birth before, so this is normal. But then, I mean, I couldn't really get up. I couldn't, stand up or sit down. It was really difficult. So another midwife looked at me the day after, and she said, I think your tailbone is either broken or dislocated. So anyways, after that, I had to go somewhere and get an x-ray, and it was dislocated, and it took a long time to heal. So I think I was somewhat traumatized from that birth. I remember people telling my husband and I, after you have your baby, when they tell you to go home, you're gonna miss the hospital, you're gonna feel like you don't want to go home. But we had the complete opposite experience. Like, we wanted to go home because we had a really hard time, and the midwife was just, yeah, we didn't have a great midwife, and but we were so grateful that our doula was able to support us. So yeah, that was kind of the first birth. I think the fact that you have to let go. The fact that you have to let go, because I think we tend to want to control things, and labor is just, you just have to allow for the pain or whatever you're feeling to just be. And I think for me, my second time around and my third time around, when I've done that, my labors had gone very differently. Because I think with the first one, like, I felt like I was in control, like I could do this and I could get this outcome. But I think the second time, my second labor was extremely fast. From the time my water broke to the baby being born was 1 hour. And I actually delivered him in the hallway before I even went inside the birth center that I was gonna have him in. But I had completely let go, and I had practiced on how to breathe and work with the contractions instead of like fighting against them. So I think that was a good lesson from my first, because I was fighting against it. But then when you just let it be and allow it and just be open to the possibilities, I think, yeah, the experience becomes more empowering and better, I think. I think to be gentle with yourself, but also again to have realistic expectations, because I think, again, yeah, we always have this need to control, but also we think this way, and then we think this journey is gonna go this way, and then when it doesn't, sometimes it's challenging. But also I think believing in my power and in my strength, because sometimes I'm one who's done things very differently than many of my friends and family around me. So it's always been like, well, we've tried that and it doesn't work, or, I don't think that's gonna work. So I think, yeah, it's just believing in your strength, but also being open to, hiccups and challenges along the way, and just taking things one day at a time. I don't know if it's like traditional, but for us in Ethiopia, we have a tradition after the birth where we bury the umbilical cord when it falls off the baby. But I followed that even though my kids were not born in Ethiopia. And I always wanted them to have that piece, because the meaning of it is, always people say, I want to be buried where my umbilical cord is buried, which is like a full circle, right? Like, that's kind of when you were born, you buried that, and then when you pass away, your body rests there. So that's the concept, and I always found it's just so beautiful. So every time I've had each baby, I've saved the dried umbilical cord that falls off, and I would give it to my mom, and she's buried it in their house to just signify that. And I find that very beautiful. Kind of a funny story with that was with my second born. As you know, sometimes it can fall off and you don't see it and you miss it. It had fallen off. I couldn't find it. I checked the diaper, the bed, his clothes, everything. I couldn't find it for like days. And one day I was about to wash his clothes, and I found it on the edge of the washing machine, but it had been sitting there, for like several days. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really meant to be, because, otherwise it would have just gone and gotten washed and discarded. So I saved it, and she buried it. So I've done that for all 3 children. So that's kind of the culture. And then obviously during the postpartum, I followed, at least for the most part, the Ethiopian traditional way, which I think is very similar for most Africans, which is resting for as long as possible. When you have more kids, sometimes that's not possible, but I always have tried to do that and use the foods that we use to try to heal. My husband, for sure. And then I think my mother, my sister, and then other, friends who were mothers before me. So, but yeah, my husband, he's just so involved and very ready to learn about, just the processes and, labor and birth. And actually, an amazing thing, when I had my third born, he's actually the one who caught the baby when she came out. So he's just very involved and very supportive. And then, yeah, my mom and my sister also just like emotionally, just really encouraging. So I've been very blessed. And then I've had, sister-in-laws and friends also who have been mothers before me who've just been very supportive. So yeah, the one person would be my husband, but then I think I've just had a good community support. I would say it's pretty easy, or makes it easy, because I used to live in the U.S. where I didn't have, we didn't have a lot of family around us and a lot of support. And I think here it's very different. I think being on the continent where I feel like I belong is really nice. And then little things that, were so difficult and when you're living in the West are easier here, like breastfeeding in public is just so taboo in the US, which is such a normal thing here. And here, I mean, nobody's looking at you, nobody's judging you, nobody's telling you to cover your baby. So I feel like from that point of view, it's been really nice. And, we do have at least an Ethiopian community. We have friends. My husband is from Kenya, so we also are closer to Ethiopia and Kenya if we wanted to visit family or family wants to visit us. But I also like, being here, just being able for the kids to just play outside, be themselves, and not have to think of, racism or them not being themselves, and just having a intentional life. I really love it here. I really love being a parent in Rwanda. It makes it easier. Interesting. I haven't put that much thought into it, but I think Ethiopians, we love our culture. We really value our culture, our language, and for me, that's been one thing that I'm really trying to do. Is even though my kids are half Ethiopian, I'm really trying to instill that, some of those cultural practices and, but specifically the language, because it's one of the only written languages in Africa that's still here. So I'm really trying to make sure that they know their language because it's a part of their identity and who they are. I don't know if I think some of the things are learned when you're living in the country, so I don't know if I'm able to practice some of those things because we're not in Ethiopia, but I think just giving them that piece, that language and culture, I think is kind of, I guess, maybe unique, but yeah. One of the biggest ways is I follow the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo faith, so we have a church here. Our church services in our language. We dress in our traditional clothing, and they get to be with other kids and with other people who are from the culture. So that's one way. Another thing is food. Food is a big thing because they're also Kenyan. We always try to eat as much as possible a Kenyan and Ethiopian type of diet so that they know. I involve them in making some of the foods. But also, again, reading books for them and teaching them about the history, the culture. So yeah, that's kind of how I do that. But also, again, because they're from two different cultures and then living in a third culture, I always have to make sure that it's balanced. I think motherhood means giving yourself to me, and sometimes I think, especially in today's age, there's just a negative way of looking at giving yourself, and kind of we're in this me culture, and I think, there needs to be a balance again, but I think giving yourself is such a beautiful thing. Especially for a baby that you've had. I don't know, for me, I find that beautiful. Of course, I don't mean you have to be like self-sacrificial to the point of self-destruction, but I think giving yourself is just, for me, that's how I see motherhood, because that's, yeah, for me, I think that's one word, and that's kind of how I've seen mothers and grandmothers do it. Of course, like, you know, maybe during their times they weren't access to some things, maybe they didn't have certain freedoms, but I think there's a lot to be said about just you know, having that good attachment with your child, you know, whether it's breastfeeding or holding them. For me, I just love holding my babies, hugging them, and I think yeah, there's a part of giving in that. So that's what it means to me. Yes. I think I've picked up being still and taking things slow, because I think coming from a very fast-paced place, you want to do things really quickly, you want to rush, and you know, sometimes you're not really fully present in the moment and appreciate the moment. I always tell people that I really enjoy weekends here, because just the country is very slow-paced, and I really like that aspect. Of course, sometimes it does have its, you know, downsides, because when you want to get something done quick, like, you know, sometimes you can have a hard time because the culture is very different here. But I think I also love the positive of just like on a weekend, you just get to be and, you know, slow down and really be intentional about the way you're spending your time. So that's one thing I've picked up that I really appreciate about, you know, the Rwandan culture. I think do what works for you, and also go back to, you know, just have a non-negotiable, because I think especially in the day and age where, you know, we have social media and just like so many different advices and so many things, I think you have to have some discernment to decide, does this help me or does this stress me? Is this helping me, you know, in my journey, or is it you know, negatively affecting me? Of course, for me, there are certain things I really stand by that I think are so essential and fundamental for how you raise a child. But for the most part, I think you just have to, yeah, you just have to kind of take a step back and really know what works for you instead of what works for everybody else. Again, because I've told you, for me, I've done things very differently. I've always had criticisms of, oh, like if you do this, this is how your child will be, or if you do XYZ, this is how you know, things will turn out. So for me, I think I've always tried to kind of shut out that noise and tried to follow my instinct. And I think there's so much to say about the maternal instinct, because that's something that, you know, God gave us, that we're able to just know what to do as mothers in different situations. And so for me, I like follow your instincts, and also again, shut out the noise if it's really overwhelming you, and just have I think, and value community. I think, and again, in today's world, we don't value community because we feel like we can do everything on our own, and as mothers, it's just not sustainable. Community is so important to be able to thrive in motherhood and not just survive. I think they would say involved. They would say, maybe my firstborn would say strict, but I think they would say loving and caring. That's a good one. I didn't have really like many unique cravings, but I remember with my firstborn in Ethiopia, we had this dish that we make from flax seeds. Like, you would grind the flax seeds and then you mix them with water, lemon, oil, just like some pepper and stuff, and then the injera, like the bread that we use, you kind of soak it in with some onions, tomatoes, and like chili peppers. And I remember I ate that all pregnancy, and it was funny because towards the end of the pregnancy, people are like, you shouldn't have done that during pregnancy because that can induce labor. I don't think it's like factual, but I guess traditionally people do take flax seeds to kind of I guess, cleanse their body and prepare for labor. So they said that, but I remember I was just obsessed with that, and I made sure I ate that every single day. So yeah, I don't know if it's funny, but it's that, yeah, I didn't have many weird cravings, so. I don't know if there's one particular thing, but we kind of like to play kind of like peekaboo, but then just kind of in our own language. And I know all my 3 kids have liked it as babies, and then as they've started to speak, they always say it. But also my husband has made like a sleeping song for each of our babies, some in Swahili, some in English, and I think I love that because they've gotten so familiar with it that when we sing the song to them, they're just they're very happy about it. So yeah. I think for me maybe will be, I guess, might be a different advice, but I think I would say prepare, and prepare not from a sense of buying things and, you know, all these material things that people tell you that the baby needs, but more, I think, mentally, emotionally, and physically for the pregnancy, the birth, and the postpartum, and really to try and enjoy to being slow and resting, because a lot of moms these days feel like, oh, like now I have to get up and snap back and all of that. So I think just taking things slow, but also preparing again for the big things, which are again the postpartum and you know, breastfeeding and things like that, because that's, I would say, you'd get more value out of that than maybe, you know, preparing the material things. And I think knowing that you are enough, because we always feel like we need something extra to, you know, to be a good mom, but that's really not it. For, you know, literally 99.9% of the time, the baby just needs, you know, mom and dad to be fed and to just be, you know, to be held and to be comforted. So I think just knowing that you're enough and that what you need for your baby is just, it's in you, it's right there. That's very interesting. I think one day at a time. I mean, it's hard to balance, but I think it will depend on the situation. Yeah, I would say there's a lot that I like from traditional parenting, but there's also parts that I don't like. So I try to pick and choose what works for, you know, my children. And also each child is different, because some children respond better to a certain way of parenting, and then others don't. So I think it's just taking it child by child, but also day by day and situation by situation, because every situation is different, every child is different. So, you know, you just have to, pick and choose and decide what works best for you in a certain time, in a certain situation or season. So that's kind of how I do it. I think maybe playing outside, because I think, yeah, some of my best memories as a child were just playing outside and just doing the most simple things, but also being with family. I think one of the biggest gifts I would say my parents gave us is just their presence and their time. And I have this really good memory on like every Sunday in Ethiopia, we have this thing called meso, where people just eat around from one plate together, and my mom would always prepare like meals, and then we would all eat together from the same plate. And you know, just I don't know, creates that sense of comfort and just family and closeness. So I do my best to do things like that for my kids, to also instill the culture, but also to just have that you know, connectedness. Oh, that's such a good question. I think it has made me more patient. about how things go, because sometimes, you know, when I was younger, I felt like things had to go just this way, the way I saw them and the way I wanted them. And I think motherhood has allowed me to be flexible and also, you know, to be able to pivot if something doesn't go the way that I was imagining it to go. It's okay, like, you know, it'll get better, and sometimes it's for the better. So it has allowed me to be able to be okay with change, constant change, because you know, when you're a mother or a parent, like, your kids are growing and they're changing, so there's always new experiences, new feelings, new challenges that arise, and it's ever changing. So I think it has allowed me to embrace the just how life is, that it's just unpredictable, but it's a beautiful journey, and there will be hard times, but there will be good times. So I think, it has really allowed me to be flexible and okay with just how things go. So that is that. But I think it has also allowed me to be I think more caring and empathetic to people and people's journeys and their experiences. So it has truly changed me and transformed me. So